Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Spiritual Survival Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Brown. Our team's mission is to help you have eyes to see the times we are living in and take unprecedented measures to prepare yourself spiritually for the events that will precede the second coming of Jesus Christ. If the mission of our podcast resonates with you, please click subscribe, like, and share this content. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Spiritual Survival. We have a guest that I'm really excited about today. It's Greg Kite. Greg is a lifetime friend of mine. Greg and I grew up in the same ward in Houston, Texas. And I remember as a kid being on a camp out with Greg, and he had a copy of Sports Illustrated with him. And on the cover of the Sports Illustrated was a picture of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And Greg talking about how he'd love to play in the NBA one day. And lo and behold, he did. He played in the NBA. Ted had a 12-year career with numerous teams, most notably the Boston Celtics with Larry Bird and Robert Parrish and Danny Ainge and others. And so we're going to have him here today to share some of his experiences as a basketball player in the NBA and as a Latter-day Saint. And we'll talk about maybe some of the things that helped him survive spiritually in that environment and just some inspiring stories from his life. So, Greg, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Randy. Great to be here, and excited to join you on your podcast, your show here, and it's great to be able to stay in touch all these years.
Greg was always a very humble person and a really true friend. When the Boston Celtics made it to the NBA championship against the Houston Rockets, I was living in Houston at the time, and Greg called me up out of the blue and offered me tickets. And he offered me 2 tickets, and I called one of my buddies and asked if he wanted to go, and he didn't believe that I had tickets, first of all, and he also didn't believe that someone on the Celtics gave them to me. So but I was just a real humble, true friend, and I've always appreciated that. Greg, anything you want to say as we start?
No, just it's like I said, it's wonderful to be here. It's been greatly blessed in my life to be able to be around good friends. We both grew up with goodly parents, and then had great youth programs, great leaders. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. And we've just both been so blessed in our lives by having the gospel of Jesus Christ in our lives and knowing that the things that we do and being able to follow those commandments and keep the covenants that we've been blessed with. So I'm excited to talk to you more about that and share that with others.
Yeah, so glad to have you, Greg. Most people know Greg as a center for the Boston Celtics or for the BYU Cougars, but I remember him most as the catcher for the Maplewood 2 softball team.
Yeah,
best slow pitch softball catcher in the region.
Yeah, you talk about a dynasty. We had a church softball dynasty, didn't we?
And basketball too, but Greg wasn't allowed to play on our team because he played varsity. All right, so this is Greg and his wife Jenny. Tell us how you met Jenny, Greg.
Well, Jenny's was at BYU a year before I was. I went to BYU in 1979. Was on the men's basketball team there, of course, and Jenny was on the women's basketball team. She's from Orlando, Florida, and that's where we live now. It's where we lived our whole as our off-season home or in-season home during my NBA career, and since then we lived there. And apart from basketball, very good chance I would have gone to BYU. My mom and my siblings had gone there, but I was recruited there, obviously, by the basketball coaches and the basketball team. But when I got there, I was still being recruited. Jenny started recruiting me. She actually, the story's kind of fun. We some of the preseason workouts we practiced worked out in the old Smith Field House, which is still there. They use as a volleyball court, and Jenny was there sitting with her roommate, Jackie Bean, later Jackie Bean McBride, who was a great women's college basketball player in herself. And she told Jackie that she was going to marry that guy. And she saw me out there. And then we got, not that she was extremely forward or anything like that, but word got out to I think their home teacher or brother in their ward, Terry, and Terry got a hold of me or called me or something. We both lived in the dorms at Helaman Halls and introduced me or said, "Hey, this girl would like to meet you." And we got on the phone together and talked once or twice. And so they practiced before we did at the Marriott Center. And she said, "I'm about 5'10" and light brown hair. And so I went out there to look, and there were about 5 girls out there with who were about 5'10" to 6 feet with light brown hair. So I had a hard time figuring out, but if I was smarter, I would have figured out it was the one that was blushing a lot. And anyway, shortly after that, we went on a date after our first game, and my first game of my freshman season. And Terry went with a young lady, and we kind of double dated, went out for pizza, and the rest is history. But a real funny story about that date: we lost that game to Illinois, and Jenny's such a competitor. She goes, "I don't know if I would have gone on that date if it was me losing the game. I would have been so mad." And she said, "But we had a good time, and you were fun." I was upset we lost the game, but I guess I could compartmentalize a little bit better. But that's how we met. That's how it got the ball rolling.
That's awesome. So 12 years in the NBA. I wanted to show this picture here with you guarding. I call him Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think he was might have been Lou Alcindor. I don't know when he changed his name, but
yeah, I think in shortly after his years at UCLA, when he became a pro with his conversion to Islam, he changed his name from Lou Alcindor to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Mm-hmm.
And I guess why that was so meaningful to me is that kind of took me back to that camp out we were on, and you had that Sports Illustrated with him on the cover, and here you were guarding the guy that you used to look at on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And then over on the right-hand side, that little teeny guy is Michael Jordan, and you're about to crush him, it looks like.
Yeah, I think Jordan got scared and just dropped the ball and ran away.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
No, chances are Michael probably made that shot, but yes, so that was pretty awesome. And during my career, not only to play with some of the most well-known and famous players, Hall of Fame players in basketball. I played with 5 Hall of Famers just on the Magic alone, but to play against some of these guys like Jordan, who many people consider, or he's always in the conversation, the greatest player of all time, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar until not long ago, last year I think it was the all-time leading scorer in NBA and pro basketball history. So a lot of fun, and play against some of my childhood idols. I had a poster of Kareem and Wilt Chamberlain and Elvin Hayes in my bedroom when we were growing up. So I always liked the big guys. And cool story, got to play against Elvin Hayes even my first year as a rookie. Got to go in the game and guard him, and remembered watching him as a kid at the University of Houston. So kind of the full circle there.
Yeah, I wanted to get a couple of pictures with you with some of the greatest of all time. I consider Magic and Larry, they're still my top 2, I guess, because that was my era. But yeah,
no, they're definitely among the very top. And Magic and Larry, I was in that. The years I was with the Celtics from '83 to '88 were really some of the peak years for Larry. They'd won 1 championship in '81, with him before I got there. But that they really changed the NBA. Their popularity, them being on the 2 marquee teams, it really took the NBA from a not so popular league to a very widely popular league. More and more television sets turned on, and then the expansion of the exposure of the game worldwide. So, and then then right behind them was the Michael Jordan and the Michael Jordan era. So that they really set the stage to help build the NBA where it was today. And they're great athletes, great competitors. It was a real privilege to play, with them and against them.
And here's a couple pictures. So after the playing for the Celtics, tell us a little bit about where you went then and where your career went from playing with Boston.
Well, after the Celtics, I spent a year and a half with the Los Angeles Clippers, which was kind of the exact opposite of the Celtics back then. The Clippers were probably the worst or one of the worst teams in the league, but it opened up an opportunity for me to actually get more playing time on a bad team and help me to develop and become a little bit better player. I then played for a couple of months also with the Charlotte Hornets during that time, and then 1 year with the Sacramento Kings. And back in, the Orlando Magic, first played with their initial year was 1989. I played with them from 1990 to 94. And like I said earlier, our off-season home was in Orlando. So we were actually sitting around. I think I was still with the Celtics about 87 or 88 when they announced that the Magic were going to be one of the new teams along with Miami and Minnesota and a couple others that came to the league. And we said, hey, wouldn't it be kind of fun to play for the Magic someday right here in my adopted hometown, my wife's hometown. And that ended up happening. So that was a very good experience. Again, I got to play an awful lot. I was a starting center most of the time for 2 years. Then my third year, they drafted a guy named Shaquille O'Neal, and they gave him my starting job. And
I heard you trained him. Is that right? Did you train him?
Never gave me an explanation why. I practiced against him and played him, and and I was his backup center for the next 2 years. And not a lot that I taught to Shaq. Maybe I just leaned on him a little bit and made him work hard. But he was a phenomenally talented guy with a really unique body and build, and was a good person too. So enjoyed playing with Shaq.
There's a couple of other pictures. That guy on the far left, I don't know if many people liked him very much, but it was good. Somebody of his size.
Depends what side you're on. Some people didn't like the guy on the right. That was that's Bill Laimbeer, and Bill was part of the Detroit Pistons. They were called they had the nickname was the Bad Boys. And after the great Celtics-Lakers run for a decade, where the Celtics or Lakers were always one or both of us were in the NBA Finals, the Pistons with Laimbeer and Isaiah Thomas broke through and won 2 NBA championships around 1990, 91. And Bill was a very good player, but he was also the consummate provocateur, and it was very physical, made a lot of contact, made a lot of moves, but he was every good story. And that's one of the reasons we love to watch sports, for example. It's just is the hero's journey. Every good story needs a villain and a hero. So we were glad as the Celtics to be the hero for many people.
Yeah. And there's another picture with Jabbar, and I'm not sure who you're going up against there on the right-hand picture. It's the right hand on my side anyway.
I'm not sure who that is. It's when I'm with the Magic, and that looks like one of the Grant brothers. That may be the Washington Bullets were playing, but I'm not sure who it looks like Harvey Grant, Horace's brother, number 44 there. So
okay.
Anyway, nice jump ball.
And then I know as one of the blessings of your time with the Celtics was getting to play with 2 other former BYU players and 2 other members of the church, Danny Ainge and Fred Roberts. You just spoke about the hero's journey, and one of the things about a hero's journey is there's always a period of trial and difficulties. Maybe you could just take a second and kind of share. I know that the being in the NBA has got to be glamorous, and but I'm sure being young men with that much money, there's temptations, there's things that maybe make it difficult.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to share with you about that. So, it was great to be able to have Danny Ainge, Fred Roberts, and I were all teammates at BYU. Danny was a senior when I was a sophomore, and Fred was a junior. So we were stair steps each year, and both of those guys played in the NBA a long time. In fact, a few more years than I did. And Danny was drafted by the Boston Celtics in '81 after his senior at BYU and joined them. So I was able to I was drafted by the Celtics in '83, so Danny and I were teammates the whole time that I was there. And then in '87, Fred, who had played for some other teams like the Milwaukee Bucks and the Spurs and the Utah Jazz, had signed as a free agent, or was actually in a trade with the Celtics. And so for 2 seasons there, they had 3 of us all together. And that was great, a lot of fun. We were all in the same ward. We also had Boston Red Sox pitcher Bruce Hurst, who's LDS, who was in our ward. So, and Trevor Maddich, who's still an ESPN commentator. He was
Oh yeah.
in the single adult ward, I think down in the stake or the next stake. So it did. Besides the Celtics being a great team, the Red Sox had a great team then. The Patriots are pretty good. So the 5 of us LDS athletes in the area did garner a little bit of recognition and media coverage and some talk shows and things like that for that, where they focused on our, talked about our membership and faith in the church. And but you mentioned, yes, right, about Randy, about life in the NBA and the temptations there. Well, the adversary, no matter what walk of life we're in, puts temptations out there, for us, and wants us to surrender some of our free agency by doing things and not keeping the commandments, following the covenant path. So it was certainly a blessing to have those guys with me together. Fun little thing. Danny and I had a little. If we ever saw, or somebody saw us swearing on TV or in a game, that we had a metaphorical swear jar where we put I forget what it was, $10 or something every time we're caught swearing into that swear jar, and we donate that to the missionary fund. And I'll just add that Danny's swear jar was a little bit fuller than mine, but he also got to play a lot more. So, but as far as life off the court in NBA, certainly, the money that people made was very, very nice. It would really surprise people how much it's progressed, because it's really incredible now what they're doing. It's just astronomical what's been done. I was in the early '80s, was not far removed from guys in the '60s and early '70s who were star players and had part-time jobs in the off season. So just as a quick example, as far as the money, I was a first-round draft pick, 21st draft pick, and got a $100,000 contract, a 3-year contract. It was $100,000 the first year salary, and 125 and 150 the next 2 years. But those weren't what they call guaranteed. Now that same draft pick gets probably $5 million or $5 to $10 million, all guaranteed. So that's part of that growth and boom that the NBA has had. But certainly does when you play a game for a living. You're doing something like as an entertainer, an athlete. Of course, there's lots of people that are paying to watch you play. So there's people who want to get in your pocket, or there's also, there's certainly women and opportunities out there. Certainly, with the lifestyle, a lot of those guys, some of them were married that we played with. Many guys weren't over my career. Most of the players in their 20s and 30s. So, and it really varied. There's some guys who went out to night spots often and out on after games, but that certainly wasn't what we were doing. And all in all, though, it really wasn't difficult. I think it's no different in some ways. People in other walks of life and other careers, do they get in situations where they're traveling, where they're on the road, where they're with someone who's not their spouse in a setting? You just need to always avoid those things and avoid temptation. And we were able to do that. We did have a lot of games that were on Sunday, for example, but we always tried to, myself personally, I know Danny and Fred did too, tried to minimize do on Sunday outside of just getting to the game, and at home or on the road, if the timing was possible, we'd at least try to get to the sacrament meeting and get to the ball game. So I think just keeping up those, just like it is for anybody else, keeping our defenses up and avoiding those temptations were it really wasn't hard to do for me, and I feel like we were blessed and prospered because of it. And I think also our teammates who saw that or knew that may have joked about it a little bit occasionally, had fun. We all had a lot of fun with each other, cracking on each other, but I think they respected it and they honored it, and they didn't try to coerce us into anything that we wouldn't that wouldn't be part of our beliefs.
Well, let's do you have any before we change direction here, maybe you could just share some of the faith building experiences perhaps that you had while you were either at BYU, while you're in the NBA, some of the things, maybe doors that were open to you that maybe wouldn't have been otherwise.
Sure. I think even with the decision to in high school, I was a very good student. I was a very good athlete. Loved playing games, other games like baseball, softball, football, but focused by about 10th grade on just on basketball. Wanted to be a high school basketball player like my older brother Chris, who was 5 years older, and he played at the same high school, Madison High School. He also had back then he was able to play on the church basketball team for some reason was very good, and went to one of the last all church tournaments in the 1970s when I was about 11 years old. So that was cool and fun to watch. And but then I also wanted to be a college basketball player and a pro basketball player ever since I was 10 years old. I knew it wouldn't just happen, that I had to have, I was big, I was big for my age at any age, and I grew to 6'11" as a teenager. And so that was helpful. I mean, there's not as many big guys out there, but it took a lot of work, a lot of persistence, and a lot of effort. But I think one of the things that was a big decision for me, and was had some things noted about choices I would make or opportunities that I have in my patriarchal blessing in the future, was like making a decision on where to go to school, where to go to college. And I had dozens, hundreds actually, of colleges across the country that wanted me to come play basketball for them, because I was a high school All-American player, big guy, and also an excellent student. So I was able to narrow that down to before the end of my junior year to about 15, 16 schools. And of course, BYU was on the list, along with University of Utah, Duke, Texas, University of Texas, University of Houston, where I grew up, UCLA, Kentucky, and others. And then before the start of my senior year, I got that down to about 4 or 5 schools. And that process of making that decision was, I think, the process that we all make or learn to make when we're making any decision prayerfully. Number one, my parents really didn't. I know they loved to see me go to BYU, and they're very happy about that, but they didn't make that my decision. They weren't making my decision for me. My dad only had a couple of schools where he'd been on the campuses for conferences where he said I just didn't want me to go there. Didn't think it'd be a good idea, but he didn't say I couldn't. And so that decision, that process of visiting some of those schools, talking with the coaches, talking with my parents, talking with my high school coach, praying about it, fasting about it, it was a decision that I make. And it came down to these UCLA, Kentucky, Texas, Duke, and BYU, and I chose BYU. And that was and I had that confirmed many times over, that was not that it couldn't gone to some of those other places. Like, for example, I couldn't gone to some of those other places and done well athletically, academically, been involved, with Institute, been active in the church, things like that. But it was the opportunity at BYU was just tremendous. So the decision to go there, number one, even if even if I'd flunked out of school and turned on my knee and not played any basketball, I hopefully I'd met Jenny before that had happened. But I did meet Jenny there, and we've had been married in the temple over 40 years ago, and have a wonderful family and many grandkids. So that's the number one blessing. And number two, besides the education and the athletics we got there, we were a great instrument for good during that era with using athletics and basketball specifically to share our values and share our testimonies. I had a chance to speak to many people, many youth groups, just our successes. I saw a quote recently that Tom Holmoe, the BYU athletic director, who was a football player back then when we were there, attributed to Elder Holland, and I won't quote it exactly verbatim, but he basically said, Elder Holland said that BYU is one of the most visible or the most visible extension of the church as far as visibility to the world. And he said then within that, athletics is the most visible arm of all the departments and things at BYU. And so I have a great testimony of that. I was grateful to be able to be a part of that and be part of how we're able to perform well and share the light of the gospel with others through that. And we may not all, like I said, when you're playing basketball or you're an entertainer, singer, performer, dancer, whatever, musician, you get to people pay to watch you work or watch you perform. We don't, in most walks of life, we don't do that, but we still have that opportunity through all that we do in our temporally to take care of ourselves and help others to use that to share and spread the gospel light to others. So that was a cool thing. And just a quick story too. President Oaks, Randy, was he was then President Oaks. President Oaks at the first presidency now, but he was president of BYU in 1979, March of '79, when I took my recruiting visit there to BYU. And we had a chance there to sit down with myself and Coach Frank Arnold, coach at BYU then, and President Oaks in a room at the Marriott Center for a few minutes, and he just, got to know me a little bit, said hello, and he spoke about the opportunity. He said, there's all these other schools out there that are great academic institutions. He said, but when you go to UCLA or you go to Duke or something, and you're a runner and you cross the finish line with that on your chest or your jersey, a lot of people may not associate that with the church. You may be a good church member, probably wouldn't at all. He said, maybe you go to the University of Utah, they associate Utah a little bit with the church, and he said, but at BYU, they're always going to associate that with the church. And so he, was one of the early people, besides what I already knew, who kind of shared that with me about the vision of what we could do as we represented the university and the church through basketball and through athletics. So I appreciated Elder Oaks sharing that with me at that time.
Yeah, let's transition a little bit to what you're doing now. I know you're the founder of a school, and you also have, if I believe, have the number right, 10 children.
That's right.
Both of those true facts.
Yes.
Share a little bit about your purpose in life now with 10 kids and running a school, and tell us about the school, its purpose, things like that.
Okay, well, so Jenny's 5'10" and I'm 6'11", and when we're at BYU, we got engaged. We got married in 1981 while I was still there and in school, and she was finishing up. And she told me she wanted a big family. So with our height, I thought she meant centers, forwards, volleyball players, maybe a couple of supermodels. There's one of our daughters on the left, Melissa, one of our oldest. You can see all of our daughters look like supermodels. But what she was talking about was numbers. She actually used to tell people growing up that she wanted 12 children. So we didn't quite hit that. But we then we're trying to have children ourselves, and biologically it wasn't happening. And so then through many miracles, the Lord blessed us. The way our Lord blessed our family was through adoption. And so all 10 of our children were adopted as infants. They're all about either twin. We have two sets of twins, the oldest two girls and the youngest two boys, who just finished their mission last Christmas time, and are back at school. One's at UVU and one's at BYU. And so they range from 23 years old to almost 37 years old now. And out of that, we have our 6 oldest kids are married and have 20 grandchildren with 21 on the way. And
Wow.
yeah. And the grandkids are a lot cheaper. The grandkids also make being a parent so much worth all the effort worth it. But it was wonderful growing up with these kids having this family. We're very close, and it's been great to see all of them to progress and do well. There's Melissa and I and our son-in-law Andy with John Stockton and myself last winter at the NBA All-Star Weekend. We have a retired players association, and they have a conference at All-Star Weekend. We got to say hello to John. Actually, Fred Roberts is photobombing us in the back there. He's right behind Andy, but it's a good time to see some guys I played with. And on the right, you mentioned the school. This is our high school team who played with us this summer. On the left, our head coach, Carlos Escalera. I help as an assistant coach for the high school. The school's called Pathways School. It's in Orlando. We have about 200 students in grades K through 12. And back in the mid-90s, actually a year or two before my career ended in basketball, Jenny, my wife, this was kind of her dream and vision. She saw a need there and saw that a couple of our kids maybe falling through the gaps. They were at public school, actually, where she went to school, and great teachers and all that, but overloaded classrooms and anyway, she saw a need. I kind of thought, well, what do we need this? What is there need for a private school? We went to public school, we were okay, and I said it sounded like a lot of work, and I also thought, oh, this idea will blow over. I was right; it's a lot of work. The second thing is that didn't blow over. We're now 27 years into it, and we used to go through from preschool through 8th grade for about 21 years. And 7 years ago, we added high school grades. And when we added the high school grades, I helped them get high school sports started. So I've always stayed in basketball. I've evolved in basketball one way or another. And with the school, we have I helped them start with high school basketball and volleyball. And so now I've kind of got it down to with all the other things that I do. I'm just the assistant coach. And so I enjoy doing that. I coached junior college basketball for a few years after I was through playing in the NBA. But I love the game of basketball. I love staying involved. I love teaching and helping and seeing these young men grow and compete. And the school, we operate the school with a nonprofit called the Gift of Learning Foundation. So looking back on that vision and inspiration that Jenny had, they've helped a lot of kids and a lot of families and done a lot of good in the world with that. So it's been a great decision and choice. Yeah, so this pop up the slide here, Randy, with a couple of people that bring back a lot of memories to me. Who are these people? These are my teammates and coaches from my school days in Houston, Texas. And
was this Madison High School?
Yeah, so on the left is myself and 2 teammates in the middle, Pat Hicks, the shorter guy in the middle, and John Semple. We were all teammates at Madison High School and also at Pershing Junior High in Houston. And those are our coaches. Coach Benton on the left, Paul Benton, one of the all-time winningest coaches. He's 85. All-time winningest high school coaches in Texas. And then Tom McDougall was our assistant coach. And I had the chance to be recognized by the school district there in Houston in August and inducted into their Hall of Honor. So all those guys got to attend, and the guys on the right are Pat, John, and I, as well as 3 other junior high school teammates, guys who played high school basketball at some other high schools, and our coach then, Coach Lee Tynes, who's in his mid to late 70s there. So it's just that honor was nice, but going back and seeing all these old friends and teammates and the coaches were able to come with some of their advancing age, was just the greatest to me, and it's really one of the great things about sports. But I think of other things that we do, whether it's a quorum or a family or our friends, is those lifelong friendships and experiences and bonds that we have, and then from these coaches who were all not only excellent basketball coaches, but they were all very, very good men, and being able to teach us and be role models and examples for us, and they still live that way. So, many of their players, like us, have all done well and followed that example that they set for us. So that's one of the tremendous things that about sports and athletics, and I'm sure in other um, avocations and things like that, you get the same thing. But those friendships and bonds and those experiences are wonderful.
So this is your team now.
This is the team now. This is those grandkids that I spoke about. This is actually 17 of the 20. It's hard to get all of them together. They live in different parts of the country, from Utah to Arkansas to Georgia with our grandkids. And so we had 17 of the 20 last Christmas season together and at a cabin down in southern Utah, and a lot of smiling faces. A couple of 1-year-olds over there on the left who wanted to bail out, but they're a lot more social now that they've grown. So the grandkids are beautiful and great to see them progress. We've been blessed to be able to have oldest one is now 11, and sitting just to my right on the left-hand side of the picture. So a very young group.
Well, your influence is spread so far and wide. I even recognize 2 of those kids. We found out that you had a daughter in our ward once you showed up at our sacrament meeting, and realized that your daughter had married our bishop's son, and one of your grandsons was really good friends with my grandsons.
That's right. Yes, they lived in the same ward together for a few years, and yeah. There's some more of our just upper left, some more of our granddaughters, the closest ones who live in Georgia, and their grandparents, my daughter-in-law's family, they live in North Florida. So we were all able to get together, and as we said, we're big. We're Cougars through and through. We love college football and college sports, and I was at BYU, played University of South Florida. I think last year we got to go to the game with some friends from Orlando, but some beautiful pictures of some of our grandkids there. Again, another stop. Actually, my daughter Mackenzie and her husband, both BYU grads and big Cougar fans. Got that was my jersey number at BYU, number 50. And there, one of my sons, Taylor, works at BYU, lives in Springville, and there's his daughter, Kaylin, with Cosmo, and my daughter-in-law, Kara, and so they love
Cosmo's
seeing
no
Cosmo.
relation, huh?
Cosmo's no relation, no.
Okay. So you've
Again,
having a family of 10 kids, you when you look in another generation down the line, you've touched a lot of lives.
We have, and I can see that going backwards too. I look at my forebears and in my family and my wife's family, and you see what great blessings that being covenant keepers and going to the temple and enduring to the end, if you will, can have in our lives. And you see the light in the countenance of those who do follow that and share that. And so we've been blessed by that. My mom's family, some of her family are Danish pioneer ancestors that came to Utah before the railroad, and then her and then my dad was a convert when he met my mom, but very faithful member. And then my wife's family, both her mom's and dad's side of the family, were some of the early members, early pioneers, if you will, of the church in Florida, in North Florida. So we see the great blessings, not only with our children and our grandchildren, but of our other extended family. We love to do family get-togethers. There's a little bit of time there with our last summer in Utah, where having a little grandpa days activity. We're learning about volcanoes there on the computer, and then went out and did some volcanoes in the snow with the the soda bottle and the Mentos, and there's a bunch of them that got together. Great to see all the cousins get together. A bunch of them live in Utah, so they're able to get together, and there's a bath time in the hot tub. And family reunions are a big thing for us. We just celebrated the 56th family reunion with my mother-in-law's family in Florida Panhandle town at Defuniak Springs, and that water we're in there is a little chilly. That's one of the cool things about Florida. There's a lot of cold springs, so we had a little bit of an overcast day where we're jumping into about, I don't know, about 70-degree water, 68-degree water there.
How about your mouth is open like that because you're in shock?
A little bit, yes.
Is that an alligator out there in the middle?
No. Yeah, we just jump over the alligators in Florida.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is where water skiing, I think, was really kind of took off. So we just know how to jump over the alligators.
And who are these two in the bottom left-hand corner?
Oh, those are on the bottom left. Those are our twin sons, Thompson and Talmadge Kite. They're the ones who just was their 23rd birthday just a few weeks ago.
They were on a mission here in Utah, weren't they?
Yeah, they went on a really unique mission during they put in their mission call during the start of the pandemic, and they were at BYU, Idaho then, and it took months and months and months for it to go through, and they ended up being called to a service mission actually at church headquarters, and had some really unique experiences. They worked with Catholic Charities for a couple of weeks, and then they worked with up at Granite Mountain in the vault, the church vault, for 3 months of Cottonwood Canyon, and then they worked some of the church office building with some of the digital records and files with the church, helping correct things that were errors on websites, many projects. And then their last almost year and a half, a little over a year, they got to work with the church broadcasting productions, and were involved in almost all of the productions and broadcasts from Temple Square, from the Tabernacle, from the Assembly Hall, and then also many of the broadcasts that the brethren are doing now. You know, they'll do a broadcast from church headquarters to a conference of missionaries, say in the Philippines or something like that. So I got to meet and work with a lot of wonderful people who work for the church. Also learned some fantastic skills. So they're back going to school at BYU and UVU right now, and working in kind of the same thing that they did for the church, working part-time at the MTC in Provo. So they're enjoying it and doing well.
These are more grandkids and
more grandkids. Our daughter Maddie in the upper right, or in the upper right, with her husband Ivan. They live down in St. George, and those are some of her beautiful kids. There's a few of them, a couple of families together down here. And like I said, in Florida, we just jump over gators. So that's one of the great, if you want to come to Orlando, one of the things you shouldn't miss is Gatorland. It's one of the old attractions. There's just a stuffed gator out there that the kids are on. And 3 of our daughters up in on a hike in a canyon somewhere.
That's where they train all the kids to start jumping gators. You know?
That's right.
All right. Well, this is where I put in a shameless plug for my book. I wrote this book, published it 11 years ago. It's called Experiencing Christ. And in part of this book, I share a little bit about you, Greg, and I don't know that I've ever told you that, or but I make a little bit of, I don't know, an allegory or a parable about Greg Kite. And I was trying to explain a covenant relationship. And I think so many times as members of the church, we get so worried about perfectly, living the gospel and doing it a little bit perfectionistically, that sometimes we feel like we're not enough. And I compared that to your time with the Boston Celtics. Greg, you're a 3-time world's champion in basketball. I mean, the chances of anybody accomplishing that in life are so slim. But I'm sure you would agree with me that it's nothing you could have ever done on your own merits. Partly because of the nature of basketball, it's a team sport, and you win as a team, you lose as a team, and in our relationship with the Savior, it's not just based on our merits; it's based on our merits combined with the merits of Jesus Christ. And in the book, I kind of just compare that to your time with the Celtics, even though you weren't an all-star at the time, or you were on a team with Larry Bird, you were on a team with Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, on and on and on. And it was the chemistry. I mean, I might have been a little bit biased, but I don't think I've ever seen a team with that much chemistry and unity, and Larry Bird with just his will to win. I just kind of compare that a little bit to how we're going to be okay if we stay in covenant with our Savior, and we're going to end up world's champions in the sense that we're going to overcome the world, and we're going to have salvation and eternal life, exaltation. So I wanted to kind of throw that in. There's just some of your world championship rings, and I think just as you look at people's lives, over the whole span of someone's life, you can really see purpose in their lives, and I think especially with covenant keeping people, you can see that the Lord doesn't give up on them. He works in their lives. I wrote another book about 1.5 years ago about my dad, and it's called Forever Blessed. And basketball was to my dad kind of like basketball was to you. He didn't go as far as you did, but it kept him from maybe going off the deep end in times in his life. And if it wasn't for basketball, he wouldn't have met my mom. And then just from there, his relationship with the Lord strengthened. My life, my brother's lives have been so blessed by my father, and it's all because he was a covenant keeping father. And I see that in you too, Greg. You're a covenant keeping man, and your legacy in basketball is wonderful, but your legacy with your wife and your family and your grandchildren is one that's going to be forever. And those are just my thoughts. Anything you'd share along those lines, Greg?
No, I appreciate those thoughts, and I'm excited to read your book, Randy. I did have a chance to read the book about your dad, and I mentioned I had those pictures of those reunions with coaches and teammates. We need to get together and have a reunion with your dad, and some of the guys are still around if possible, because we had a lot of fun playing those softball and basketball teams with our ward back in Houston as youth, and your dad was often the coach of that, or always the coach of one of the coaches of those.
That's my dad's claim to fame is, he was Greg Kite's coach back when he was younger. So, everything you really learned was from him. Here's a picture of the foreword of my dad's book, and you can see that it was written by Greg. And when he saw that was so meaningful to him that you would take the time to do that. He just turned 90, by the way.
Oh, wow. That's great. Well, wish him happy birthday. So those team relationships, we were just I'm going to blank out on the scripture, but we were just in Sunday school today talking about Corinthians and Paul speaking about husbands and wives and how being one body with Christ, and so we really are, when we yoke ourselves together with our spouse, or if we're single, we're yoking ourselves again together with, whether we're single or married, with Christ is so important, and really the way to to quote unquote win championships in life, in this existence, is that's how we do it. And we've got some great fundamentals. In basketball, you're successful if you can be successful if you master the fundamentals, the dribbling, passing, shooting, and then you can play together. The chemistry that you mentioned, if you can play together and play smart, as well as play hard, give it great effort, you can walk away, as John Wooden always said in basketball, when his great teachings was, you'll if you do your best, you know, you can always be. That's what you should always be striving for, is to give your best, and to be able to do that, whether you win or lose the game. You know, there's going to be a winner and loser in sports in the game, but doing your best and giving your best effort. And we're all different. We're all blessed with different gifts and abilities and talents and sizes and makes and situations. So I think what's important for all of us is not to compare ourselves to each other, but to do and magnify what the Lord has given us, and take opportunities, you know, because there's opportunities out there always to serve and to love other people and to help other people, whether it's our families or others. And that's really, I think, where we build and grow. I think looking back to those teams, besides, you know, having that bond, we really had a love and a great fellowship for each other, and so that's important. Success, you know, being on a team. So if we're in our family, within our ward family, our state family, you know, we're all going to have different opportunities and callings and things to serve, but they're also very important. You know, one of the things about being a athlete on a great team like that, yeah, I was one of the top. You know, as you get from high school to college to pro basketball, the funnel gets really small. There's a lot less players playing. Back then, there were about 350 players total playing in the NBA. You know, maybe 75 new ones that came in every year. So it's a very small group of people. Now it's a little bigger, about 450, but still a very elite bunch. And so you could be a great player or a very good player at another level and never play in the NBA. And then even once you get there, you got these players who are the stars and the best players, but being a part of that team, supporting, being the best player that I could on those championship teams, and working hard in practice and pushing the other guys together, also working hard to be prepared for that moment. Like one example is, you know, I didn't, in my first few years with the Celtics, I didn't play a whole lot of minutes, maybe 10 minutes a game in the most years as a backup. But you know, along came the time, and I think it was in my first or second season, a couple of guys are hurt or sick, and all of a sudden I'm starting a game, and I'm starting the game in I think in Salt Lake City, in one of them, and in the Bay Area, and playing instead of going from playing a few minutes or not playing, I'm playing 30 minutes, and so it's a big thing to be prepared. I was prepared and kept up my conditioning and things like that to where I could physically be ready to do that. So I think that as we keep covenants and as we strive to do our best, fill our callings, and to keep the commandments, we can be prepared for these times and these hardships in our life. I look at all the great blessings of hope that we have as followers of Christ in our lives. You look at the turbulent times, the commotion in the world, the pandemic, and so many people just becoming with despair, depression, hopelessness, and yet we have joy, we have peace in what we have with the gospel.
Yeah, Greg, the reason I started this podcast was because I have always had a testimony. As long as I can ever remember, I've had a testimony of my Savior. I've had a testimony of the restored gospel. I've always known I had a Father in heaven. And I received what's called a patriarchal blessing when I was 15 years old, which counseled me to be valiant in the sharing of that testimony. And felt like I've had much opportunity to be really valiant in my testimony. And so I began this, and this is probably the most purposeful thing I've ever done. And thanks to people like you who are willing to come on and share their life, their own testimonies. You know, it's helping us carry this message of the restored gospel and the blessings of keeping covenants. Covenant keeping is what it's all about. It's a relationship with Jesus Christ and a relationship with our Heavenly Father. And you're a great example of the fruits that covenant keeping produces. So again, thank you so much, Greg, for coming on and sharing your heart with us. I think I got the right pictures. This is the Orlando Temple, right?
That is, yes, it is the Orlando
Just,
Temple, and
4 different times a day.
4 different times a day. It's certainly one of our favorites. We actually have the blessing to live in a neighborhood right behind the temple, and so we didn't really have to. When our kids were growing up, you should always have a picture of the temple in your house. We just opened the windows and you could
There you go.
see the temple. But and we did have pictures of the temple. But and it's wonderful to see, that just how the temples are. More and more temples are being built and been announced. Years ago when we got married, the closest temple in 1981 was Washington D.C. and then Atlanta, and now we have 2, 3 soon to open in Tallahassee. Fort Lauderdale is open, and a couple more announced for Florida alone. So it's what a great blessing it is in this temple building time to have temples accessible or more easily accessible to so many members of the church all around the world. And so to take the opportunity to prepare to be able to go to the temple and to maintain and to get a temple recommend and go through the temple, it just is unparalleled. And I am grateful for that blessing that we have, and we pray and hope and encourage all and share my testimony to those who are listening and to those who may watch this in the future, that that's really the cornerstone. If you'll set your sights on going to the temple and attending the temple and doing it regularly, doing that throughout your life, you'll have wonderful, wonderful blessings for you and your family and for the generations to come.
Well, President Nelson has said we're living in the time that Nephi saw in vision, and that the greatest miracles the world has ever seen will happen between now and the Savior's second coming. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing power coming down upon the saints because of this covenant relationship with him.
Thank you for being with us on the Spiritual Survival Podcast. Again, if the mission of our podcast resonates with you, please click subscribe, like, and share this content.